Story 1. I once had a guy at the urinal lift up my shirt sleeve to get a better look at my tattoos while I was midstream. Story 2. I'm not talking at the urinal. I'm talking to the urinal. It's a conversation. We have a relationship. Story 3. I had a coworker who not only got chatty at the urinal, but would also shout, "Hey, who's out there?" and try to start conversations when seated in a stall. Never in my life have I avoided an individual as much as I avoided this guy. That brand of social acceptance and entertainment is beyond me. Story 4. I once had a man look down at the color of my urine, then look me in the eye and tell me I needed to drink more water. He went on to explain in more detail, maintaining eye contact the whole time. He was a complete stranger to me. Story 5. I don't mind a chat if we're using the same urinal, especially if we are crossing swords. Otherwise, it's a total no. Story 6. Some of you never went out to bars in your early 20s, and it shows. Urinals turn into town hall meetings after a few drinks, and nobody found it weird. Story 7. I have experienced this and don't think it's a problem. I get a laugh out of anyone who's more social than me. Just don't grab my rooster. Story 8. You know that meme that goes, "It's going to get weird. I'm going to make it weird." Some days I just feel like channeling that level of chaotic energy, even in the bathroom. Story 9. At a show at Red Rocks, where a lot of people take LSD, this guy loudly exclaimed, "Damn, these new urinals won't stop moving." That was probably the only good urinal chatter I've come across. Story 10. I've never heard guys talking at the urinals. What really bothers me is when people talk loudly on their phones, especially while they're in the stalls. Story 11. Marine entered the chat. Not for nothing, in basic training and in most bases, the urinals don't have dividers. The toilets don't even have dividers. So it became normal to chill, chat, and use the restroom. Story 12. I don't think I've ever talked to someone I don't know personally at a urinal. This is not the time to talk. Story 13. Depends on what they want to talk about. If we're complimenting each other, fine. But don't come in and start complaining about Ian's spreadsheet he presented in the meeting about office stationery consumption. Story 14. Last week, I was at a urinal in a brewery, and the guy across from me was making noises as if he was experiencing intense pleasure. It went on for minutes. Another random person, and I couldn't stop laughing. It was the strangest thing I've witnessed at a urinal, and I've been to some unusual places. Story 15. Bathroom chatter is nothing new. I've had a conversation with the guy in the next stall while we were both in there. We're men. We don't get weird about it. Story 16. I only talk if I'm there with my friends. It's not the best time to start a conversation with a stranger, but when I used to go clubbing a lot, there would often be drunk guys having random banter. Story 17. When I was young, I urinated like a racehorse. Now I urinate in Morse code. Since I have been standing there for so long, I may as well have a chat. Story 18. Talking at the urinals and trying to talk to you as you approach them. A few months back, I was at the pub and needed to use the bathroom badly. I went upstairs, and there was a black tie event in the function room. I entered the toilet, and one of the event attendees started to tell me a joke or something, putting his hand on my shoulder to keep my attention. He, a total stranger, had the audacity to tell me to calm down when I pushed past him to relieve myself. Story 19. Holding a conversation with my drink in my hand is a skill I learned in the service. Well, I guess giving a high five to a guy in the restroom is weird too. Story 20. I just pretend to be very interested in the wall when I'm in there. Oh yes, look at this fine craftsmanship. I am lost in thought with my private parts exposed in public. Oh no, was that splashback? Well, I'm gonna have to burn these shorts and wash my hands. Story 21. It's not the talk at the urinals, it's the talk at the troughs that scarred me as a young man. Being 7 at Fenway Park and dealing with that was bizarre. Story 22. Good thing nobody talks to me at the urinal because I tend to face people when I'm in a conversation with them. Story 23. I'm working with big, heavy, and dangerous equipment here. I need to focus. Worse still are people chatting and having full-blown conversations on their phones. Story 24. Haha. I told some guys at work that I don't like doing this. I think I offended them. I don't want to chat in the bathroom. Let me pee in peace. Story 25. I am also concerned about the men who are looking at their smartphones while using the restroom. You need to do a digital detox if you cannot stay off the internet long enough to take a break. I have actually seen guys at the gym on the phone while taking a shower. Weird. Story 26. Prostate enlargement, I think. We recently went to a classic rock concert and the crowd was mostly over 50. The men's room had a long line because 2 urinals were broken, and it was taking some of the guys a long time to pee. One said something like, "Sorry guys, it doesn't come out as fast as it used to." And it started an entire bathroom conversation. Due to my flair, I feel obligated to tell you my husband told me this story after returning from the restroom. Story 27. Once, this guy was going through a tough time because his buddy died. I'm seeing people casually losing it. I need to start talking just to finish. People are just hanging out in the world's smallest bathroom to my left. I don't greet people in bathrooms anymore. Story 28. Men who are so insecure that you're unable to talk while taking a pee. What is wrong with you? Story 29. It is one thing if we know each other and are talking as we walk in. It is another for a total stranger to strike up a conversation while our privates are exposed. Story 30. I was always bothered more by guys who lean on the wall with their forearm. Urinal chat in a pub can be funny. Story 31. Somewhat related question. Do any of you throw trash into the urinals or spit your gum into it? Why? Are you just so amazed by your own anatomy that your jaw always drops and the gum falls right out? Story 32. I'm a 27-year-old woman, and this made me giggle because I can't relate and B, just imagining someone saying something to my husband at a urinal. Story 33. How else are you going to break the awkward glances while you all hover over a 10-foot horse trough? Story 34. Then it gets even more awkward when you are both washing at the sink and you make eye contact in the mirror after sharing an intimate moment. Story 35. Not hugely fazed by a urinal chat, but the worst thing is when you're in the pub on one of those steel shared urinals. All it takes is for someone to pee really hard against the back of it, and you feel the splashback on your hands. Story 36. I once did this as a joke at a hip-hop show. I was at a urinal, and a rapper named Percy P used the urinal next to me. I turned around and jokingly called out, "Percy taking a pee." He actually laughed about it. By the way, I had been drinking. Story 37. I saw 2 guys at a rest area recognize each other by a work shirt one guy was wearing, and they were talking over the urinals with another guy in between them. They were about to shake hands, but one of them said, "Hold up, I gotta unload." That was an interesting conversation to see. Story 38. My former boss would ask me questions about my personal life and family while chatting with me next to the urinal. After that, I avoided him in the restroom. Story 39. Either they haven't read Caves of Steel or they have read Caves of Steel. The only time talking is allowed is if you're doing a fart call and answer in the stalls. Story 40. When drunk at the bar, the urinal is where you get the best discussions because every guy here is for a good reason and has his life well in hand. Literally. Story 41. That's a culture difference. I read this question a lot on the internet and I never understand why not. I honestly don't understand. This is idle time, why not talk? Story 42. I honestly don't understand what is so weird about it. Keeping eye contact while peeing. Okay, that's really weird. But just talking, come on. Story 43. It's really not that weird, especially if you were chatting beforehand at a bar and both had the idea to pee. Story 44. I recently was at our mall and had to go to the restroom. I heard laughter, and when I walked in, I saw 2 teenagers sword fighting. I walked out and went to another restroom. They laughed even louder. Story 45. Men whose whole world collapses because another man spoke to you in the bathroom. What's wrong with you? Story 46. Why are you straight guys like this? I swear the list of minor things you can't do for fear of people thinking you're gay is a mile long at this point. I don't know how you manage to function day by day with so many unnecessary rules and hang-ups. Story 47. The illusion of privacy you experience at a urinal is just a construct. While you create a private space in your mind, despite being shoulder to shoulder with others, the reality is that other men are present in the same space. Many find it ridiculous to pretend the situation is anything other than what it is and choose to make the most of it. My advice: if you want actual privacy, use a stall. Story 48. I'm 54 years old and grew up in the 1980s. Back in my day, having casual conversations about cars, girls, school, and so on while standing at the urinal or naked while drying off in the locker room after showering was no big deal. We never even gave it a second thought. Story 49. Honestly, in malls, I feel a bit weird because I used to live and work in less populated areas. It used to be a good place to meet single-serving friends, like in the movie Fight Club. Story 50. I only talk if I'm at a concert or something loud in a good atmosphere. Not while I'm doing business, but while waiting or washing my hands after. Story 51. It's so funny. Even in stalls, guys will sit there in silence because they don't want to make a noise. You're using the bathroom. What are you embarrassed about? Just go. Story 52. My response to this: I always forget how long you have to hold it in after hiding bodies. Conversation ends pretty quickly. Story 53. I completely lose my social filter when I'm drunk. The autistic brain just doesn't comply with social norms. Story 54. You haven't known awkward until you come to a urinal trough. I've encountered several in my life. Since you're all lined up anyway, you might as well crack a few jokes, but only make eye contact. Story 55. This video is required watching for all men. Story 56. I agree for the most part. Can be situational when something is said, but it's the exception, not the rule. Story 57. The last time I was at a club, there were 15 men in the toilet standing around. I assumed doing cocaine. Funnily enough, there was a fight in the club 30 minutes later. Story 58. It's only acceptable to talk to a guy who is currently undertaking the same task. Waiting, slashing, or hand washing. Crimping one off is the exception, of course. Story 59. The pee can't flow if I have people next to me. So I talk to anybody next to me so they leave faster and let me urinate in peace. Story 60. I was using the restroom a couple of months ago and heard a guy in one of the stalls talking on his phone while he was using the toilet. His conversation was interrupted by noises. And no, this didn't take place in Germany. Story 61. You've never looked over and seen an impressive penis and told the guy he's got a nice penis so he feels better about himself? A lot of men are insecure about their penis. Story 62. Not sure what the problem is here. Have you never played on a sports team? You shower with 30 other naked guys. It's not awkward silence. Laughing out loud. Story 63. I had a friend and coworker who used to break the silence in our small two-urinal office bathroom by leaning in and whispering, "Nice dick, bro." Story 64. Even a bigger question. What's wrong with people who are completely fine with talking on the phone while using a public toilet, discussing business? Story 65. Which country? Because in some, it's considered polite to say good day and acknowledge that yes, there is someone already there when taking your male organ out next to another man. Story 66. One of the worst things about being forced to return to the office after a few years of working from home is having a manager or boss chat with me while I'm in the restroom. Story 67. Are you talking about random people or just in general? I'm not going to talk to some stranger at the urinal, but if it's at work and it's people I know, everyone talks all the time. In fact, it's almost weird to force silence just because you're at the urinal in that situation, when it's people you've known for years and no one cares. Also, if you ever played a sport like football in high school, you quickly learn not to care about things like that. I once saw our offensive line soap down the floor leading to the shower so they could all slide naked across the floor like a slip and slide. No one's worried about talking at the urinals in that kind of environment. Story 68. Talking at the urinal isn't nearly as bad as those strange old guys who pull their pants down to their ankles to use the urinal. When I see that, I leave. I can wait a few minutes. There's no chance I'm standing next to a half-naked old man in a public restroom. Story 69. I once passed through an old Chicago, and the guy next to me had a massive mustache. He looked at me and said, God, the calzones here are just to die for, aren't they? Story 70. Hey man, I don't mind conversation, but we need to keep our eyes intently straight ahead at eye level. Story 71. If it's coworkers in the bathroom, I think it's more acceptable, or friends. But a stranger is a little strange. Maybe they're just social, but I want to be left alone. I remember being at a bar once that had explicit pictures plastered all over the wall. An older man approached the urinal next to me, remained silent for a couple of seconds, then turned his head to look at me and said, "Nice wallpaper. Do you think my wife will let me get it?" I just told him, "Who knows?" and tried to exit as fast as I could. Story 72. Peeing is not something I can start when I feel awkward. I can continue while awkward, but not start. There's a small list of things I can do with my penis in my hand to break the awkwardness. Talking is the most socially acceptable one. Story 73. There is a guy at work I call the Whisperer, because he sits in a men's stall with the door closed and whispers to himself a couple of times a week. It's quite unsettling. Story 74. I'm usually drunk or at a concert and had to urinate really badly during a song I liked, so I sing along at the urinal. Story 75. We just like to socialize a bit. Nothing wrong with that. I'd like to write a longer reply, but I'm at the urinal and can't type quickly. Story 76. What kind of person is having a conversation at the urinal? Pick a spot on the wall in front of you and stare at it until you're done. Story 77. Funny you should mention this. I went into a public bathroom and there was a guy having a loud conversation while using the toilet. Story 78. We are not scared of people thinking we are gay. I think the bigger question is, there are a couple of guys at work who talk to their significant others while sitting on the toilet. A dozen guys are doing their thing in the stalls adjacent, and this guy is having a full conversation. Hold on a second. Okay. What were you saying? Story 79. The anxiety in these questions is amusing. It's just a guy using the restroom next to you. You're already 2 feet away from each other. Is it that much stranger if you're talking? If it bothers you that much, use a stall. Adults can usually manage basic human functions. I don't start conversations at urinals, but it wouldn't bother me if someone were to say, "Wow, that was a tough inning for the Blue Jays." Right? It's fine. Story 80. Had some good laughs at the urinals. What are we becoming as men if we must remain scared and silent while we piss? So this is where all the guys hang out? Whoa, this water is cold. Nice watch. Guys, let me give you some advice. Never put it all the way in. That's where the crazy button is. That's why I only put the first 10 inches in. Story 81. Tell me you hate having fun without saying you hate having fun. I don't go out of my way to start conversations at the urinals, but just the other day, a drunk guy started chatting there and I found out he graduated with my cousin a couple of years before me. It's not gross or disgusting. It's just talking to another person. Story 82. Personally, I'm a conservative. I don't even like people looking at me while I use the restroom. I can talk. It's just awkward. Conservative generally refers to someone or something that is traditional, cautious, and resistant to change. Here are a few ways it can be used. Politically, a conservative person often supports traditional values, limited government, and free markets. They may be hesitant to support rapid social or political change. Socially, a conservative person may adhere to traditional social norms and values, such as family, religion, and morality. Economically, a conservative economic approach often emphasizes individual responsibility, limited government intervention, and free market principles. In essence, a conservative person or thing values stability, tradition, and caution. I was just trying to say I'm a shy person. Story 83. 2 weeks ago, I was in a stall with the door closed when I heard a guy say, "Hey man, nice shadow." I knew there were only 2 stalls. After a few seconds, I asked, "Are you talking to me?" He replied, "Yeah, your shadow. You must keep your women happy." I looked down and saw a complete shadow beneath me on the floor. I didn't say anything but moved closer to the toilet. After I came out of the stall to wash my hands, the other guy came out and used the other sink. It was awkward. I was there for dinner and he seemed pretty intoxicated. For what it's worth, there's nothing special. I normally don't mind talking at urinals, but having someone comment about a shadow was not cool. At least he was complimentary. Story 84. If we are friends or family, okay, but eyes forward and always leave a gap at the urinal. Don't talk to me with my junk out, especially when I don't know you. Story 85. Yeah, no. Sometimes in the bathroom at work, there are 2 or 3 guys who will come in and start a conversation. Dude, do your business and get out. This isn't a country club. Story 86. The more I think about what motivates dysfunctional extroverts and how they navigate reality, the more unhinged they seem. They're not dumb, well, not always dumb, but they aren't exactly all there either. Plenty of introverted people are like that too. They just tend to watch anime and wear fursuits. Some people literally can't think unless they have someone to talk to. Some of those same people also have little to no filters and next to no self-awareness. It's the person in the crowd who says the thing you're not supposed to say out loud that everyone sees. The person who can't help but comment on the obvious and make simple dad jokes and basic puns because they genuinely find them unironically funny or true. I suppose an alternative is a person who gets a thrill from making people feel off balance or deals with awkward situations by acting normal. Pick your poison. At the end of the day, some random guy decided it would be cool to talk while urinating next to a stranger. There are no good reasons. Story 87. I work at a company where 3 out of 4 employees are women, and I still have this to share. One of the few men at work is this guy named Bob. He's an older man, around 60 to 65 years old. Bob became my bathroom buddy very much against my will. Having worked there for 5 years myself, and he's worked there longer, these experiences have been spread out over my 5-year time frame but still seem unusual. There are many restrooms in our building, 6 different ones that a man can use, but only 3 of them have multiple sinks and more than 1 toilet or urinal. For the first year or so I worked there, I mostly used the shared restrooms because they were closest, but after year 3, I've tried to mostly stick with the private restrooms. This still happened. I ran into Bob more than any other man or employee while using the restroom. It got to the point if I heard the door open while I was at the urinal, I would guess it was Bob, and him asking how I was doing while I was actively urinating confirmed it. This has happened close to a dozen times. Most of the other men, I've never seen around the restrooms. They may never go as far as I'm aware. But there's Bob. Every time he would see me, coming into the restroom, leaving it or actively using it, he would say, "How's it going?" Or, "How are you doing today?" Never just a nod of acknowledgement or a quick greeting, but always asking how I'm doing. The last time it happened was my final straw. I was actively urinating when I heard the door open behind me, feeling a cold dread up my spine with an accurate guess. I heard a "How are you doing?" and I just nodded, trying to keep urinating while my mind wanted to shut it off. But I knew that was painful, so I tried to keep it flowing. Then he hit me with, "Are you busy in insert my job title these days?" And now I had gone from being nervous about this person behind me in a general sense to now being almost furious. Why does he not understand I don't want to be his friend? I definitely do not want to be engaged in restroom conversation. I have never said more than one reluctant word previously, and this upsets normal people. I got mad enough to turn my head to the side and say, "Hey man, I would appreciate not talking to me while my hands are occupied and I'm actively urinating." He laughed. That person just laughed like I told him a joke. If I gave in to my urges easily, I would have tackled an old man into a metal trash can. Instead, he did me a great favor and finally retired or left just a couple of months later. Story 88. Why don't you peruse the endless subjects who ask this question repeatedly? Story 89. What's wrong with that? Does it make you uncomfortable that my pants are around my ankles and my ass is showing? Is it the direct eye contact? Or is it the conversation we are starting? Story 90. Is it really that big of a deal? I understand that some people prefer not to, and I never start the conversation myself. But someone talking to me while I'm using the restroom. So what? Story 91. I remember some teachers asking me how it's going when I stumbled across them at the urinals when I was in college. It's just chatting, similar to when you talk to someone in the grocery store line to pass the time. Silence feels much more awkward to a lot of people. I don't particularly mind it. Story 92. Guys who repost this question, even though it's been posted hundreds of times, what is wrong with you? Story 93. Well, many things. In this case, establishing dominance to make me feel better about my disability and the concurrent need to find a restroom wherever I can access, whether there are neighbors or not. My need to pee exceeds the comfort bubble of other people. But for able-bodied individuals, I'm guessing it's just as funny for them as it is for me. Story 94. That's literally the creepiest thing. Don't say a word in the restroom. You break all the rules. Talk to me at the urinal, and I'll turn to face you to talk back. Think. Story 95. Why does urinating need to be done in silence? What's wrong with you? Go join the other people who need a cubicle to urinate. Seriously, though, I'm fine with it until you turn to face me midstream. Story 96. All of you who act entitled and complain are just like your always complaining wife or girlfriend. Trust me, you're not that special, and neither am I. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.